All right, hello and welcome to the latest Fireside chat. My name is Tommy Flanagan. I'm the editor of Faultline, the weekly media and entertainment trade publication from Rethink. And today I'm joined by someone who has over 25 years experience working in the design, deployment and decision making of media delivery infrastructure. Someone who is an influencer to some of Australia's largest broadcasters and streaming providers, has even sat on a highly esteemed seat on the SMPTE board and has a penchant for electric vehicles. No, it's not Rupert Murdoch. It's Michael Day, product management lead for professional media at Australian incumbent telco, Telstra.
Hello,
Thanks for
Tommy.
joining us, Michael, from the other side of the world.
Pleasure.
How are you today?
It's a pleasure. I'm doing well. I'm doing well.
Great. As you can see, to commemorate this call, I've got a stunning Sydney beach behind me to relax. So let's get straight to the point, Michael. What does Telstra, Australia's largest telco, need with a standalone broadcast services arm, which is um, where you are?
So Telstra's had an involvement in media and television, I think, for as long as the company existed. I think right back in the early days, it did the helped televise the moon landing. So, I mean, before it became what Telstra is today. So it's always been involved in telephony and radio and television. And then more recently has had designs or structured around industry verticals. And so we became an industry vertical around professional media. There's also another one around retail media as well, with Telstra T boxes and things like that. But ours has been there for quite a while, for many years, and always focused on media. And companies like ours like to bring that special approach to these kinds of industries, bring industry specialists like myself in to be that industry face for media or whatever vertical they look after, to make sure that we're servicing those kinds of industries the best we can.
Great. And for a bit of context for audience outside of Australia, how does Telstra Broadcast Services compare? I mean, maybe comparable to other major operator TV technology divisions like Comcast Technology Solutions, maybe more like the now
Yeah.
defunct MX1, or are you offering something a little different?
MX1 or BT Media or Tata Media
Hmm.
or PSSI or The Switch, those sorts of organisations. I mean, we've got technology, we've got people, we've got, well, it's basically domestic media networks, international media networks, professional and managed services all around media. Something generally people that are dedicated to that task, but also using the core of Telstra to back that up. So we're much like a BT Media, if you will, something along those lines.
Cool. Um, so before we get into the technology, want to have a look, kind of explore structurally, because there's some questions that a lot of people have about how having a parent company that is ultimately
Mm.
also a customer, how does that influence the relationship compared to like a normal parent subsidiary owner structure? Because there's kind of this preordained idea that a media technology supplier being owned by a tier one operator gives you kind of virtually unlimited financial resources, but at the sacrifice of autonomy. I don't know. That's probably a bit of
That's
a
probably true.
misconception. Oh, it's true.
No, there's probably
Great.
some truth in that. I mean, because pr- i- media is a fairly small vertical in terms of the larger Telstra. I mean, we're 100 odd $1 million industry vertical, and the next smallest one that sits next to me in my group is about 500 million. So, we're relatively small in the grand scheme of things. General telco type of products and solutions run into the billion sort of scenario, which means that we're quite small in the grand scheme of things. We're also fairly needy and vocal. We want lots of bandwidth. We've got fairly tight requirements. We've got fairly timely requirements. We need to turn things around in a hurry, and we're always very visible. So it's actually quite awkward sometimes to be in a larger organisation, because they've got their own timelines that might revolve around some other big product release that can hit many thousands or hundreds of thousands of customers, whereas ours is a very bespoke arrangement that we work with a small number of very influential customers. So there's a bit of tension there between what we need to do for our customers and how we need to move the machinery that is Telstra to support our customers, and what's the norm for Telstra. Saying that, you're 100% correct. Right back when you opened the topic, was that we have very strong backing. I mean, multi-billion-dollar business in Telstra, the biggest telco in Australia, very strong brand, well known in our region, basically very strong networking skills. So there's some really good things to be used there as well. So, but it isn't a bit of a balancing act between what we need to do for our customers and what we can do with the machinery that is Telstra behind us.
Mm-hmm. Always throws me off a bit when I'm expecting someone to disagree and they agree outright. It's great.
No,
When I've
yeah.
asked that similar question to similar companies, they haven't been so kind of honest. So that's refreshing. Thanks. So zooming in on the underlying technology a bit more now, that's why we're here. Something that our audience, our regular Faultline readers might be familiar with because we wrote a story about it at the time, was your acquisition of MediaCloud last year, which is a company that offers cloud-based media management and playout tools. So can you give us a bit of an update on, first of all, the thinking behind that purchase in the first place and how the progress of integrating the technologies is going?
So that was quite strategic. I mean, the core of what we do in Telstra is managed services, particularly for media delivery, and move the media from one place to another. We've got a very strong team, like I said, that's been doing this for a long time. The other pillar that we wanted to bring into play was professional and managed services. So we've got the networking professional managed services, bringing that up next to it. It was opportunistic because that particular company was for sale, was looking for a new home. It was strategic because it brought us a new stack of software, people, processes, capabilities, products that we could add. And it was a net add to our business. And it was something that was a very clear, something that we could use with our existing products, with our existing skill sets. And was something that fit neatly into our sales cycle as well, into the kinds of things that Telstra deliver, because it's not like we sell a box product and it just goes out the door. We tend to sell solutions. We tend to sell relationships. We tend to sell a very a deep and integrated solution to our customer. And that one fit quite well in every step with our technology, our sales process, and our strategy for where we wanted to go as a company.
Okay, to what extent do you see that acquisition, the purchase of MediaCloud, as a kind of continuation of the commoditization around playout and media management technologies?
So that's an interesting thing, because that's slightly different in every country, and it's actually taken a little while for outsource and for a consolidation of playout to happen in Australia. It has definitely happened, and it's definitely something not growing, because there's only a limited number of media customers in the country that need that kind of facility. But what we've found is that we're going through what is probably a second round of that outsourcing, or a second round of reviewing, and people are looking at alternatives. And there's probably three players. There's do-it-yourself, there's Media Hub, there's NPC, and then there's Telstra. So we've been quite lucky in capturing the likes of SBS with the recent acquisition, but we've also picked up a few new customers that have gone on to that new playout stack. And there's a few others that we're talking to as well, because they're in that next stage of where they want to go, whether it's finding another service provider, or whether it's they want to move to a new technology stack. There's only going to be so much of that, because it's not a big market. There's not a lot of players, but there is a different shift from, or at least a want from the customers in the region to look at what we've got to offer. And I have to say that cloud-based, long history, big backing, the ability to bundle professional managed services, we've got a pretty good pitch.
So you're saying there's only 4 players. You only have 3 main competitors, you think?
If I remember correctly, yep. So that's do it yourself, and plenty of customers do. There is NPC Media, who tend to look after the 7s and 9s. There's Media Hub, who look after ABC plus a number of others, and then there's Deluxe, now Telstra Playout. So I think there's 3 commercial and do it yourself.
Wow. Okay. So potential acquisitions on the card in the coming years there, then, to kind of further consolidate the market and wrap it up.
There is more
small
consolidation.
pool.
There's a small pool, and there's a desire to get the best out of your service provider, so everyone's interested. We're also looking at doing this a little bit offshore, trying to pick up and talk to those in the region close to us, or even potentially take it further afield. But of course, we'd like to be able to, you know, make it work here locally. Make it work well here locally, and then export it further to the world.
Interesting bit of market insight. Thank you. So I don't think it should be any surprise about what I'm about to talk about. If we're being a little bit harsh, we could say that Telstra's something of an expert in commoditizing video technologies.
Oh
If we
yeah.
look back just 4 years ago to writing off some $500 million in assets from the Ooyala online video player business, that was 3 years after it was acquired for $270 million. So what's different this time around with MediaCloud? What kind of assurances can you make that this set of technology, this business model will be successful and we won't have another
So
Ooyala on our hands?
Ooyala, yeah. No, which actually was quite a canny buy, but I don't think that they, well, obviously didn't do the right thing by it in the end. And that actually sat in a different part of the business than what I do, and was very much focused on the customer side. The work that I do and the deals that we've done lately are all around the managed and professional services for professional media. So it's the other end of the spectrum, and so it's been a very very different approach, because we are looking at, we do have quite a big industry vertical on professional media, and we've been very strategic on what we've kept, and then what we've let go, and what we've added to the stack, and it's all around that connectivity, professional and managed services. So it's been very strategic, and it hasn't been in isolation. I mean, as an example, we've done a few strategic looks at the market on where we sit. You know, who is Telstra? Who is Telstra in media? Well, Telstra is a bit like an onion, very strong here in Australia. You know, everyone knows who we are and knows what we do. In Asia, we're fairly well known, because it's nice and close, and the Asian countries tend to focus, at least refer back to us and know of us. We get a little bit weaker when it comes further afield, and some people don't know who we are beyond a straight telco. So if we look very carefully on who we are, and so what we take to market, what we add to that stack, and what we take to market in professional media. But we've also looked very carefully about what that market looks like, the total of addressable market from a Telstra media perspective, and even the serviceable market. And there's two things that we're really focused on. One is that there's an existing business out there that's say $1 billion worth of professional and managed services, and it's largely, there's more entrants, but it's more commoditized, so it's pretty flat. But there's also an element there in the professional managed cloud services that is the growth area. So we've looked very strategically about who we are, who we add to the stack, and who we address as our serviceable market, and how we take more of that market, so to speak, where our growth is.
Okay, that's interesting because one thing I would say that was notable during Telstra's brief ownership of Ooyala is that it kind of grew the relationship that it had with Microsoft Azure around
Mm,
big data in particular, is something I've read
mm.
about, which I mean, ironically, probably contributed to the downfall. But I mean, is that strategy something that will continue with MediaCloud? I mean, the clue's in the name, MediaCloud.
MediaCloud, and well, it is and it isn't, because the MediaCloud, the core operations in MediaCloud are playout, which is people and channels and those sorts of things, which is pretty traditional apart from the technology under it, and the media managed services. So the moving media around for one reason or other, predominantly to feed playout. So they're very under the covers. They're very traditional operations, professional managed services for big media companies.
Okay, yeah, makes sense. And how does this tie in to what Telstra calls the internet delivery network? And how is that
IGN.
different from what we know as a just traditional content delivery network?
So we've got well, that's a very strategic pillar. So from a networking perspective, we've got three pillars. One is our bespoke, the special event network. So it's when we go out and we deliver an Olympics for you. You know, we go to Tokyo and we make sure that we've got the people, the processes, it's nailed down, so you can get an Olympics from Tokyo to the world, and we did that. There is our premium services, which is our satellite and our fiber connectivity, our global media network. So that's where you've got a 24/7 MCR, and you can call up and someone will answer your call, someone who knows about the service that we're delivering for you and can help you. So bespoke, premium, and then IDN, which is our value service, which is internet delivered. So there's a different level of SLA, there's a different level of support. It's still a managed service, it's still a professional managed service, and it's delivering delivering content over the internet, and to a large extent, Telstra is the internet in a lot of parts of the world. So it's another pillar to our product set when it comes to media delivery: bespoke, premium, and economic, or the value. And our hope is that we will be able to deliver new things on the internet delivery network. We'll deliver new types of services there, but we'll be able to upsell you, talk to you about other services, be they managed services in one direction or a different SLA when it comes to media delivery. So it's a very strategic play from our perspective.
Okay, interesting. Thanks. So we've kind of done structure, we've done a bit of strategy, a bit of technology. Let's look at some numbers now. So as we mentioned, Telstra is rather large, $23 billion a year revenue operator. Telstra Broadcast Services itself floating around the 140, 150 million revenue a year mark. So I understand there's a goal to kind of push that up to maybe towards 200 million a year. So where is that additional 50 million a year coming from? Are you looking to expand overseas, sliding into new market verticals? I know you've just made an acquisition, but what's the kind of target and strategy there?
Yes, so you're right. We have growth ambitions. We know what the total addressable market looks like. We know what the serviceable market looks like from our perspective. From a domestic perspective, we saturate. We're big in the areas that we cover, so we're looking to be able to extend into industries close to us. Radio. We're doing much more in radio, as an example, as opposed to our traditional television. We're looking at the professional managed services, through the acquisition and more. But we're also looking very strategically at international, which is an area that we've always sort of played in or always been part of, because it was one of our sells to our domestic customers, the Australia getting content from other parts of the world. Well, now we've got a very strong push into North America and to MEO in particular, to do content delivery, move content around globally. The deals that we like at the moment are those big whales, those big content owners like the big sporting codes in the US. In a couple of them, we are the global media provider. We take their content from North America, say, and we deliver it to the rest of the world. We're big hooks into China, big hooks into Asia, big hooks into India, our region, but we can deliver anywhere. And like I say, special event network, fiber network, satellite network, or internet delivered. And so those are the kind of deals that we like, and those are the kinds of things that we're trying to chase to exploit the technology that we have.
Who doesn't like a big lucrative sports whale, right?
They're fantastic. I mean, they are super challenging, because they can incrementally add to the trouble that you have, or the media that you need to deliver, or the processes that you need to work through. But they are very transformative, and those are the ones that we like.
Definitely. And sticking with the numbers, I understand that approximately 50% of your revenues probably come from sports today. So, I mean,
we talked about the other day, and I was trying to figure the numbers, and that's probably about right. I can't say that for sure, but a lot of our revenues comes from live sporting events.
Yeah.
I mean,
so there's two ways to look at that. I mean, one side you could say that, oh, maybe you're over reliant on sports and you need to diversify, or then from the other side, you can see that sports is the biggest market. Go and chase it, go and dominate it. I mean, it's the last bastion in a lot of ways for traditional broadcast technology outfits.
Well, so you're right, and it's a little different when we're talking domestically and internationally. About 70-80% of our services are permanent services, so channels, services in the ground that just run 24/7. The last little element of that is itinerant, mostly sporting events. Internationally, it's the other way around, because our push is really to get hold of live sports and move it around the globe. That's what we do, and there's fewer permanent services internationally. But our aim, I can't remember where I was going with that particular rave.
All right, well, let's move on to kind of, I mean, we as we're wrapping up now, this is something that maybe we should have set the scene with, but it's a nice place to finish. Kind of a little summary of, for people like me who aren't that savvy with the state of the Australian TV market and where the kind of money is right now and where's the disruption happening in Australian media? We've spoken a bit about regional differences. So how can you kind of summarize Australia? I know it's a massive country, but
It is a massive country, but it tends to be very much driven around the metro regions. So Sydney, Melbourne, Brisbane, Adelaide, Perth, very much focused around those regions. And then there is the rest of Australia that sort of fills in the gaps. And it's quite a traditional television market. And it won't surprise you that the structural things that we've seen in a general sense with the Netflixes of the world have had an impact. We've seen the market change an awful lot because they've come into the market. We've seen the revenues of our traditional customers decrease. You know, where I'm from, free-to-air television or subscription television for that matter, I've done both. But in both of those areas are feeling the effects of those kinds of entrants. There was something I saw just yesterday where the level of viewership between online streamed and free to air is just about 50-50, and of course sliding more towards the subscription to the streaming than it is to free to air, which means that that area of the business is super challenged. But also here in Australia, free-to-air television is protected to a certain degree by legislation, meaning that it's got first rights to a lot of content. Major sporting events, major international events have always have got a free-to-air first under legislation, meaning that it's not going away. It's not a business that's going away. It's just seriously challenged. Revenues are challenged, so they've got to find new ways of working. They've got to find smarter ways of working. They've got to be more economic in the ways that work. So we've got to respond to that. But there's also the new entrants that are coming in as well. The Netflixes of the world, or here locally, there's the Stands and the KOs and the local streaming services. So there's actually more customers from our perspective out there that we can service. We've just got to be relevant to them because now they're online first. So they've got a different philosophy. They've actually got very similar needs. They need access to content. They want it reliable. They want it at the right price. You know, they want someone that's easy to deal with. So they're actually very similar requirements, but in a general sense. But they've got some of their own things that they need to focus on. You know, the cloud first philosophy. So we've got to be ready to service that. And we've got to make sure that we're relevant to them as well, or known to them, because being new entrants, they might not always know that we're the person to talk to when it comes to getting hold of the Australian Open tennis or going out to getting hold of Wimbledon, all those sorts of things. So it's a bit challenging to be relevant to our existing customers, to be relevant for our new customers, and be able to grow our business as the media industry is generally growing. It's just shifting at the same time.
absolutely. Cool. So to wrap up, I think it would be good to learn a little bit about what you learned during your time on the board of SIMTI, which is, I mean, it's an organisation that people look up to and admire. Presumably, you were on the board of SIMTI while in this current position. Is that right?
Yes. So I've been on the local board of SIMPI Australia for I think 15 odd years, and that's always been very focused on the local chapter, on the local industry. There's a few people that get really heavily involved in the standards and that's mostly driven out of US. We've always been very focused on the local industry, which is education, which is networking, which is trying to bring the standards, the technology, the industry to life. Been involved with that for a long time. It's been a way for me to maintain my profile as I've worked through my time in the industry, but it's also a way for me to give back. I mean, I'm a product of the traineeships that used to happen in media, and that doesn't really happen anymore. So organisations like SIMPI are one of the few places that we try and foster that kind of in getting new entrants into the media industry and then grow them. But more recently, I've joined the SIMPI board of managers, so from head office. So I'm the regional governor of SIMPI Australia. So now I represent our region back to head office. And that's been a really interesting experience because there are some similarities in who are we as an organisation? Who are we addressing? Are we doing the right things? Are we addressing the right standards? Are we quick enough? Do we need to involve oblique industries involved related to our part of media to be part of the fold to grow? Because organisations like ours are under pressure. I think associations in general under pressure, But at the same time, our industry, the technology that we're using in our industry is also changing super rapidly. I mean, Simply started because they wanted to standardize the sprocket holes for film. That's kind of where it all started. And now we're starting to talk about streaming standards or NMOS. So at those sorts of things where we're talking about IP devices communicating with each other and finding themselves on networks. So standards are important, but they also shift so quickly that a standards body's got to be really dynamic. And that's the thing now with something like SMPTE is how does it stay relevant in a world that is changing so dramatically, and in a world where associations aren't really the focus of new entrants to the industry anymore.
The thing I love about standards is you'll always find, as much as people love them, you'll always find little pockets of resistance in some ways to standards. Do you find that inside Telstra?
Yes.
Something?
Well, actually, less with Telstra. I mean, sometimes more with other organisations that I've dealt with. Telstra loves to work the standards. I mean, the reason that I'm still with Telstra, still with SIPTI, is that Telstra pay for me to be involved in SIPTI. I mean, I would have done it anyway. I've done it for a long time anyway. But they actually sponsor my connection with SIPTI because they love to involve the standards. They do not like to do bespoke things. The core of our network is 2022. A lot of the services that run over our network are 2110. We try it as best to adhere to and use the standards as best as possible, because it means that our services are as applicable to everyone that we can, making it as ubiquitous as possible. So we like working the standards. It doesn't always work. Sometimes we need to do something a little bit bespoke, some elements of IDN are bespoke, as an example. But we like to work the standards because it means it's generally better for the industry, and it makes us easier to work with as a service provider in the industry.
Yeah. All right. I think before we go too far down the rabbit hole of standards, that's probably a good place to end, I think. So, Michael, thanks for joining us. That was a fascinating conversation. I think we covered a lot of ground there today. And thanks everyone in the audience for watching. We'll be back with another Faultline Fireside chat soon. And don't forget to head to our website, rethinkresearch.biz, check out the full Faultline weekly publication in all its glory. So cheers, Michael. And
Thanks, Jules.
cheers, everyone. Goodbye.